Hey y'all, it's Anime Man. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 7th episode of Utau, and I gotta say, at least in my book, this is by far the weakest episode of the series. Don't get me wrong, this episode wasn't bad per se, but it could have been so much more better. Like, this episode did what I really don't like seeing anime do sometimes, and it just does hand-holding. Because at the start, we get a recap of last week's episode, and I was thinking, well, since last week presented a bit of information, I was cool with that. But then later on, you have Takia, just think about it, and isn't it all, again, the information that was presented in like in the recap, and I'm like, wow, I guess that shows you the respect that the writing staff has for the viewers, where they don't think they're smart enough to remember information from like a few minutes ago. And then, aside from the script doing things like that, what I also did not like about this episode was I felt like it wasted time on shit that was unnecessary. Like, there was a little gag where you have Takia go inside the room, and then he touches the panties of the sensei, and then he gives him the meal, and then he's like, bye-bye. And while I did get a chuckle out of it, I felt like it wasted literally 2 minutes of important screen time that could have been focused on other shit. And then there was like a sequence where you have Takia and his friend just shouting out and doing the schoolwork, and they're like, yeah. And it literally felt like it wasted time just to have a gag there. Because afterwards, we get to the meat of the episode, which is them just taking some stuff from that belonged to to Takia's father, and then taking it to Roshoji's place. I felt like this episode could have been better served if it cut some of that crap out from the first half, and then just, literally, it could have been better if the episode would have started with first Takia waking up, then we get a quick montage of some school things of 10 seconds, and then afterwards, Takia could ask his friend, do you want to go help me out, take some stuff into Roshoji's place? And then you could have had Mio want to go, and then they could have still had, like, maybe them talk about Kana, and that would have helped speed up the episode instead of really dicking around in this episode. So that was really one of the downsides about this episode, the pacing. It was really, really fucking slow. Because I felt that this episode, it had some potential to be really, really good. Because the second half, it does have some nice stuff. Like, for example, we see these detectives observing our main crew for like a bit before they go into Roshoji's house. And then this episode, from a story standpoint, we find out at least a bit of information in regards to Takia's mother, that she was blind and that Takia used to get sick a lot when he was younger. Like, I wish that maybe they could have given a bit more screen time and having Roshoji talk to Takia about Takia's mother a bit more. That would have made the episode really, really engaging. But, well, didn't do that. But at the very least, I'll give it credit. Despite the slow pacing, at the very least, we find at least a bit of vital information in regards to Takia's mother. And we find out a bit more about how Arima, Takia's father, was doing research and all that, and how him and Roshoji hit it off pretty well. That was some interesting information. So at the very least, we get a decent amount of plot-relevant information revealed to us this episode. And then we find out that fucking Roshoji does know, near the end, he does know about Takia's time-traveling device. So that does increase the tension skill quite a bit, significantly, for this episode. So the writing staff, at least in some portions, they at least increase the stakes quite a bit, because that means Takia has to be a bit more careful when dealing with that old man, because he was even close to setting the device, because he was doing hypnosis at least before Mio and Takia's friend showed up. So that was also another nice element about this episode that saves this episode from being bad, and at least it makes it a smidge above average, at least from a story standpoint. And then when it ends off with Roshoji's mother mentioning that there's something that goes on near that place, and it has its own breath. That was also relatively interesting too. So, from a story standpoint, this episode, while it could have been done better, it at least just barely got the job done. From a character standpoint, I actually say it's more decently done from that standpoint. While we didn't get doses of character development for Takuya, Mio, or Takuya's buddy, at the very least, we got characterization for Roshoji. We're slowly seeing his descent into madness more and more, with him not having stuff in his house, with him mentioning that if he sleeps on the bed, he feels like he's floating, so that's why he sleeps on the floor, because he's comfortable. So we're at least getting the psychological factor behind Roshoji. So there are some positive elements about this episode, and it was interesting how he gave snippets when he mentioned that Takuya's father was researching immortality, which makes me wonder, could that immortality research be the reason why Arima's in that place that's between the present, future, and past? Could he have maybe found the secret to immortality? Shit, I don't know, but I'm definitely pumped up to find out more. So, at least from that standpoint, at least we got to know Roshoji more. So, from the character standpoint, it did decent. Now, the art animation, I actually liked them. There were some nice art shots, like when you have Roshoji do the hypnosis against Takuya. I thought the animation was pretty nice. Had an eerie-like, creepy vibe. And then when they were walking towards Roshoji's house and there was like a sunset, the artwork looked beautiful. So there were moments like that where the art really popped. Animation got the job done too. The animators did their job. And the soundtrack got the job done. And I'd say overall, I thought this episode, from a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being abysmal, 10 being exceptional, and 5 being average, I thought this episode was a 5.5 out of 10. Just a smidge above average, but it's only because we found out information about Roshoji and Takuya's mother. If those snippets wouldn't have been in this episode would have probably been an average episode, or even a below average episode for me. But due to those reasons that I mentioned before, that's why I cannot rate this episode a 6 out of 10. Just didn't feel like it did enough to earn anything higher than a 6 in my scale. Especially after coming from the last few weeks of exceptional episodes. But I'm still pumped up for next week's episode for sure. And, it happens to some anime. Sometimes not every single episode in a show is gonna just be fucking popping on all cylinders. Hell, even some of the best animes of all time, like Cowboy Bebop, have had episodes that are not so great. Like, for every 8 episodes that are great, you might have one stinker here and there in a show like that. Or even Gekki no Guitar, for like every 12 or 13 episodes or 8, you might have a stinker here and there too. So it goes to show you how well I think this anime's been done so far. If after 7 episodes, the first episode that I'm not exactly in love with, if the 7th episode is the one I'm not exactly in love with, and that's after coming out a streak of 6 pretty good episodes, then I'm mighty fine with the way the show's going. I just hope for next week, pick up the pace, and it goes back to the quality we have in like the first 6 episodes. But yeah, everyone, these are just my thoughts. Comment down your thoughts in the episode in the comment section below. Rate the video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later if you subscribe for more. Alright, thank you all so much for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.